All right, and welcome to Hat-Trick Sports Talk after what was an incredible Sunday full of pretty much everything. And I'm here, as always, with Shane and Brandon for our Week 2 NFL post-show. How are you guys doing tonight?
Pretty well. Got a little nervous there at the end, with that Sunday night game. But hey,
Well,
turned out okay for us homers.
yeah. The thing at the end of the day is you have to realize that the Seahawks don't do uneventful Sunday night football games.
Yeah.
So,
And
Normally.
let's start with that Sunday night game. Brandon, I'll go to you first. Your reaction to Patriots Seahawks.
Off the bat, my reaction is this. If Russell Wilson is not the current frontrunner for MVP, people are crazy.
I have a front runner for MVP that's not Russell Wilson. I have a
this
front runner for
man
MVP that's
is
not Russell Wilson.
Dominating. And he should be MVP. And if your MVP right now is Kyler Murray, you can stuff it.
That's me. I have Kyler Murray as the MVP.
No.
He's
not at all.
He's doing something that I just cannot. It's ridiculous how he's playing right now. Kyler is at just an unbelievable level. Right now, he's my front runner.
Wilson is playing much better than Kyler Murray.
I will say it's 1A, 1B. It could change. We're in week 2. I'm not going to definitively say Kyler's my MVP. We're in week 2.
Right, but okay, going back to what I was saying about today's game. Russell Wilson is currently playing the best he has ever played in his career, in my opinion. This is Russell Wilson being told, do what you want to do. Go crazy. And I think it's interesting that you have there's an interesting correlation between that and having the offensive coordinator up in a booth, away from the sideline, away from the emotion, away from the game. That went well. I think, honestly, the biggest thing, there were some negatives about the game, such as the fact that the Seahawks lost a couple big pieces, had a call that ejected one of their starting cornerbacks, and then saved. Yeah,
it was Quandre Diggs. Yeah,
and then really, again, the biggest problem is our pass rush. It's not existent. It does not exist on the field, which is a big problem.
Here's my point, though. I don't think it's that big of an issue. I really don't. Compared to last year, I don't. And the reason why is Jamal Adams. As we talked about last week, the guy just flies around the field. I don't see the pass rush being as much of a problem. I really don't. Just because Jamal Adams just sets this defense up for success. The team loves to build secondary, not line. Now that they have a secondary piece that they can really rely on, I don't have that much of a problem with the pass rush. Not as much as I did last year.
I think it's interesting because the pass rush is not great from that defensive line, but like Robert said, I mean, it doesn't feel like they're really missing it because of Jamal Adams and just the presence he brings. However, I do think that it could hurt them down the road. But again, it's only week 2. It's so hard to tell with all this stuff. It also depends on the offensive lines too that they play because New England's offensive line is pretty good, whereas last week versus the Falcons, the Seahawks pass rush looked okay. I mean, it wasn't great, but they put some pressure on Matt Ryan, got a few sacks. So, and stuff with Cam too, because he's more not like he used to be, but he's more mobile than some quarterbacks. So,
and I'd also say, there were one or two times where, actually more than one or two times, where the Seahawks had sacks, and then Cam was able to wriggle out of it or just like shimmy away. Like there were a couple times where the guy had him and he was able to pull out, or he was able to and the biggest one for me that I think of is when Jamal Adams shot the gap, came literally right up the gap and like hit him, but it's like he was going too fast and like slipped right by him on ice, it looked like. So I wonder a little bit about whether the players were playing a little too like energetically, at times, because it seemed like they weren't being able to do some of the fundamentals like wrapping up and pulling to the ground. And I will say this, like, as much as I hate Cam Newton as a player, he had a phenomenal game, in my opinion. Like, he played very well. However, Patriots are not going to play. However, there is one problem. He scored, one passing touchdown tonight?
I believe so. Yeah.
That's not going to be efficient for the rest of the season. Like, teams are just going to do what the Seahawks did whenever they get to the goal line and load the box and basically just say, nope, here's a wall. You're not going through it.
Yeah, one passing touchdown day for Cam. Here's my thing with the Patriots. I think they have a shot to be a playoff team after these 2 weeks. I think that what they're doing, for me, I mean, it's not even close to 2015 Cam. It's much different. But there's something about the freedom that Cam has in this offense, his ability to trust guys like N'Keal Harry, guys like Julian Edelman. Defensively, they're going to be better than they played tonight. We know that the Patriots are a top 5 defense. I wouldn't be surprised if they sneak into the playoffs after these 2 weeks. I just really like the freedom that Cam has in this offense and how open he's able to just – I don't know how else to explain it, but it's like really open and they just play to his strengths. Don't worry about his weaknesses as much. They threw the ball really quickly tonight. I feel really comfortable with saying that the Patriots have a shot to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
I mean, defensively, yeah, I think normally they would be better. I mean, Russell was just ridiculous. I think it wasn't really fair for them almost. But I mean, I am surprised at how much, like you said, that all this freedom that Cam has. I really was not expecting that. I was expecting it to be, Bill Belichick saying, okay, you're going to hunker down and do things my way. But, something my dad was talking about, he said Belichick just seems more just kind of loose and friendly, I guess, than he has been in the past. And I told him, I think it's because of Cam. Because he went in there and he went from having 20 years of Tom Brady, who's, Mr. Serious leader, focus, attitude, football guy, to Cam Newton, who's, flashy. He likes to have fun. And I think it kind of wore off. It is wearing off on Belichick a little bit, and vice versa. Like, Bill Belichick's kind of discipline is getting to Cam, which is why he looks very consistent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would also say this, like, if you think about it, Cam Newton, other than 2015 when he was in Carolina, had nothing to work with. Like, or very little to work with.
I would say very little.
He didn't have nothing to work with because obviously he had like a very good running back. He had a handful of good wide receivers, but like it was very hard for him. And there's a reason why he basically ended up running the ball so much. And he's still a one-dimensional quarter player to me. Like, he's more of a running back than a quarterback, in my opinion. Because in 2 games, as a quarterback, I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns in the first game, and he had 3 tonight, I think. No.
Well, it's because they do that quarterback draw at the goal line.
Right, which cost them tonight at the end of the day.
But my point is, like, that's not going to work if that's your main for the whole season. If that's your main way of doing things, you know.
You're missing a key component here, I think. The key component with this for me and Cam is, yes, he's technically a running back, a quarterback, or whatever. You could say those things, but they're taking some of the things that they did with Brady and putting that into Cam, which is quick passes, because that's where these receivers are successful and comfortable. Guys like Julian Edelman, guys like N'Keal Harry, they're comfortable when they can get the ball, when the quarterback can get the ball into their hands very quickly. And they're letting Cam do that. So you don't see those errant throws very often. You don't see those throws where he's off his back foot or off kilter with the shoulders that they were talking about in the broadcast. I think that's something that will actually help Cam sustain success. And then eventually, as they get more and more comfortable over the next month or so, you're going to see more of those long passes from Cam as he gets more comfortable. Because mechanically, they're changing how he's throwing if you look at it very specifically.
Yeah. I mean, he's a better, but he is hands down. There's no arguing that, like, 2020 Cam Newton is night and day better than any Cam Newton I've seen in the NFL.
Other than 2015, but even that's an anomaly.
Right. And I also want to go back to what Shane said, right, about Bill Belichick and Cam Newton as compared to Brady. It's interesting that you bring that up, because as far back as I would argue, like, maybe 2013, 2014, every time I watched them play, it was around 2014 when Brady started having more and more of his hissy fits on the sideline. Like, whenever something would go wrong, like, he would start throwing his helmet or, like, yelling at Josh McDaniels or just yelling at anyone in general. And I honestly believe the truth, if you probably got the truth out of the Patriots organization, Tom Brady probably wanted gone by as far back as 2014. I don't think that was a happy relationship between him and Bill Belichick. And I just don't feel like they clicked well. Yes, they won a lot of Super Bowls, but they're two very different people. And as you said, I think Belichick is honestly probably not as serious as he has been putting on for so long. But yeah, tonight's game, very interesting. Showed a lot about both teams. Obviously, happy for the Seahawks to be 2-0. And moving on to their game against Dallas.
Yeah. To finish off this Patriots-Seahawks discussion, one of the things that we kind of miss as a headline going into this game, and something that's really important, is the history between these two coaches and these two teams over the last few years and how close these games are. Shane, I'll start with you with that. That's one of the more interesting pieces, even with Cam Newton instead of Tom Brady, the chess match between these coaches and, like, the history between these two teams. It just always ends up being a close game and interesting.
Yeah, that's the thing that's interesting about them to me is it's not even like you said, it's not even like Wilson versus Brady. I mean, yeah, that's an iconic matchup already, but, like, for me, it's Belichick Brady. Belichick and Pete Carroll. That's, like, the really interesting thing, because, I mean, seeing how close these two teams have become, like, in terms of their games, how close they are, and I mean, I almost feel like they've formed a rivalry, these two teams, even though they're in different conferences, just because of the history between them, okay, let's see, Pete was fired from New England, and then Belichick took his place,
over.
right?
Oh, and after the whole Jets thing, which they explained on the broadcast tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would be
that was like early 2000s, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, and that shows, the kind of guy Pete Carroll is, because, most people, I think, would be kind of, kind of have a bad taste in their mouth about the guy who drove them out of their organization, like Belichick, or their replacement, if you will. But every time you see Pete with Belichick, they're always very friendly, and they seem happy to see each other, and so that's something that's interesting to me too. The fact that they just know that they're both these legendary coaches, and they can put whatever stuff they have in the past and just acknowledge the successes that they both are, because they are, Belichick will probably go down as the greatest coach ever, and Pete Carroll will probably be not too far behind him, so
He'll be a Hall of Famer, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right.
And then I'll finish off with you, Brandon, with that, like the history between these two teams over the last few years, especially in the Russell Wilson era.
It kind of feels like whenever they play the Patriots, it's like the Seahawks are like I have no doubt that Pete Carroll's like, so y'all remember what happened when we played them in the Super Bowl, right? And because they go out there and they play like they're trying to kick some butt. Like, there's just a separate level of like, oh, the Patriots are supposedly this like super big, scary, dominant team. Well, guess what? We can do that too. Like, we can come out here and kick some ass and like pound and ground and do our own thing. And I think it's really funny because all this week I heard on sports talk radio people being like, oh, the Seahawks, they need to like run the ball and they need to just make sure that they can't run the ball. They need to like go through the air, get a big lead, and they'll be able to win the game. Like, Belichick wants to play like the ground and pound game, and then what does Pete Carroll do? He comes out and he literally does a mix and match and does whatever he wanted, honestly, with the Patriots defense throughout most of the game. It's kind of crazy what our offense is doing right now. And like, it's interesting also because at this point it feels like Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick are the two oldest coaches of the league, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it feels less like a grudge match like it used to, and it feels more like two teams with two like wizened coaches being like, who has more tricks to play.
Right.
So it's always a game I find enjoyable, and honestly, this might have been the last time. I don't know who knows if Russell Wilson will still be in the league when we play them again. But this may have been the last ride for Russell against the Patriots, but
unless we have a Super Bowl or whatever.
Right. And if it was, that was one hell of a way for him to go out against the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
And he'll definitely still be playing in 4 years.
Yeah.
I believe it's a 5-year contract, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Russell plays them 2 or 3 more times.
I wouldn't be surprised if the schedule makers put this as a yearly thing at this point. Yeah, because of how good the matchup is.
Yeah.
You can't really do that.
You can't really do that because it's by conference.
Yeah, so I don't know. But whenever we see it next, it's going to be as good, if not better, than this one. Shane, I'll go with you for the Cowboys' remarkable comeback. The Falcons were up 20-0, and the Cowboys found a way to win. And honestly, that game just had everything. What are your thoughts on the Cowboys' win?
Oh, Atlanta, and your blown leads. Jeez. God. I mean, the Atlanta defense is just not good. I mean, if you, the fact that they've allowed, 78 points total in just 2 games, which is crazy. That's a lot of points. And granted, it's 2 pretty good offenses, but still, I mean, that's just nuts. And I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I wasn't expecting a team like Dallas with a quarterback like Dak Prescott to lead them behind from that big of a deficit, but they did.
Yeah,
that's why Dak Prescott is my fantasy MVP of the week.
All right, we'll get to
yeah,
fantasy
but
MVPs a little bit
I'd
later.
also Shane, you can't really talk about Dallas's comeback without talking about what a shit show their offense was in the beginning of that game.
The
Like,
first half was honestly
how
abysmal.
do
Well,
you
yeah.
fumble the ball
3
four
times.
times in a
Or
row?
4, yeah.
Four
Yeah.
times in a row. 4. Yes, very aggressive. 4. Because like at one point I was sitting on my couch laughing my ass off, going, "Oh, Dallas, how terrible you are!" Like, try doing that against the Seahawks. See what happens.
Try doing that against the Chiefs.
Exactly.
Try doing that against the Ravens.
Ravens.
Packers.
The
Packers, the Saints.
even the Lions, honestly. Like, you're not gonna have
The
a good
Washington
time.
football team.
I mean, probably, if we're being honest,
Not the Washington football team.
you're not
Not
gonna have a
after
good
what
time.
we saw today.
You're not gonna have a good time. Like, I think we can all agree you can't fumble that much. And the sad part is everybody's like kind of giving the Cowboys a pass a little bit in the media because they won the game. No, they don't get a pass for fumbling the ball 4 times. Cowboys are not a good team. I'm just saying that. They are not a good team.
I think they're middle of the road at best.
They are not middle of the road. They are like 1/4 of the road. They're like better than some teams, but they're like literally they're on the road. Well, okay, I'll say this. Maybe they are middle of the road because they're middle of the Robert. Actually, you're probably right. They're middle of the road, and by middle of the road, they're like on their path for their usual slot of 8-8.
Yeah, 8-8 or 9 or 7.
They're not going to do anything different this year because Mike McCarthy, fun fact, isn't
like
that great
Jason
of a
Garrett
coach.
1.5.
It's not even, but hang on. When you're talking about the coaching piece, it's not even the coach itself. It's not even McCarthy. It's the fact that, and here's the thing. I like Kellen Moore, but the offense is the same.
Yeah.
The offensive, the strategy and everything's the same. Here's my thing. This offense showed itself today. Yes, the first half, they had 4 fumbles and it was garbage. We know what this offense is. We know what this offense is when it's fully healthy. We know it has firepower. Do we see it every half or
No.
every game? No. That's the ultimate problem here. Because
Actually, we don't see it, actually.
I guess. But here's my thing. Defensively, yeah, they're not the Cowboys defense we saw 2 years ago. They're not very good, if at all. Offensively, can I see a top 5 offense from this Cowboys team? Is that too much to ask when you have Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Zeke, and then Dak? Is that too much for me to ask, really? To have a top 5 offense? They played like a top 5 offense in the second. Look,
I would have loved to see that, honestly.
if they play like they played in the second half all season, they're a top 5 offense, and at least in high-scoring games can compete. But they don't do that. I need to see that.
That was Atlanta.
If they finish at top 5 in offense, they're going to be at least semi-competitive and find their way in the playoffs. The reality is, we're not going to see it. We're just not. And that's the problem with the Cowboys. And then for Atlanta, I don't even know what to make of Atlanta.
Well, the problem is Dallas is in the shittiest division. And like
That's true.
the Washington football team is still at the top of their division. Like,
Even with the Arizona loss?
They're tied now.
They're tied. The Cowboys aren't going to have to do that much to win their division.
And we'll get to another team in their division in a bit. But,
which is why I hate the way the playoffs are structured in the NFL, because every year you have some stupid team that goes like 8-8 and gets the 4 seed.
Are you talking about the Seahawks in 2009?
Well, yes, but also like Green Bay. What was it? 2013.
Oh yeah,
2013. Last year, Philly made it in the 4 seed as 9-7. Meanwhile, the Seahawks at 11-5 had to be the 5th seed behind them and go on the road to play them.
Well. Here's the thing, Shane. Here's the thing,
Shut up,
Shane.
Robert.
We have 7 games, but we have 7 teams in each conference, so that's going to be semi-alleviated moving forward.
Okay, I know, but it's like, it's not. I don't.
You mad, bro?
No, a team like, okay, this year, for instance, right? Like, say, just hypothetically, not saying this will happen, but like, say Arizona goes 11-5, okay, but Seattle or LA goes 12-4, so they win the division, right? But then here's Arizona, who is still, a great 11-5 team and should be like a 3rd or 4th seed, but no, they have to be a 5th seed and travel on the road to Dallas, who's 8-8 and doesn't even deserve to be in the playoffs. It's just dumb.
So you're still saying in terms of how it's not necessarily how it's structured, but the fact that these teams with winning records don't necessarily have
like
home.
the seeding should be in order of your record, not your division.
But does it really matter
winners,
this
and
year?
then-
But does it really matter this year when there's no home field advantage? More
I
than
don't-
likely.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, there's no home field advantage in terms of the crowd, but you still have to travel, which is a big piece of it. You know what I mean? So.
And let's go to the Falcons as well. Actually, go ahead, Shane. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, because you just going across time zones sometimes, and you sleeping in some hotel, you don't sleep as well most likely, and whatever. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, and the 10 o'clock start for some of the West Coast teams as well, which keeps getting
Yeah,
or
true.
the 1 o'clock start. And then with the Falcons, I don't understand what they are. I still don't. And it's just like I don't know.
I think I got it.
What is it?
So I think they have, and I could be totally wrong. I probably am, but I think it's like you got Matt Ryan, who is, I would say, a B+ quarterback, probably. And he is kind of like a Dak Prescott, where he's efficient. He gets quite a few yards, points, whatever. But he can't, be greater, and like he doesn't have that edge. And as a result, I think the offense takes a bit of a toll on that. But also, defensively, they're just not good, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I think Matt Ryan is good, just not good enough to be really competitive with, with like the Wilsons or the Mahomes, the Lamars. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then as well, Julio was pretty invisible today, which can happen every once in a while, and I think that affected it as well. Brandon, for the Falcons themselves, do you think Dan Quinn is also part of this problem still in your mind?
I think Dan Quinn. Yeah, I think Dan Quinn's time is running out. Unfortunately, I think Dan Quinn is. I think he's very good. He's a pretty good defensive guy. Obviously, he was very good with the Seahawks, but I think his time is over as a coach.
When I think, I mean, I agree with you, but let me say this: when we think about, a lot of us, myself included, think about him, and it's like, oh yeah, he was great with Seattle, but it's like, was that him, or was it the really talented defense that made him look better?
That could be the case.
Because I don't know.
And then you could say the same with Shanahan, right? With when they made it to the Super Bowl that year as well.
Yeah, because he was the offensive coordinator, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Could be.
Let's move on to another NFC East team, and that is the Philadelphia Eagles. 0-2. I mean, the Rams obviously are looking pretty good at this point, but from the Eagles' perspective, Defensively, they don't look very good in my mind, and the receivers still look pretty rough. Brandon, I'll start with you with your thoughts on the Eagles after 2 pretty brutal weeks, losing to Washington and then to LA.
Yikes. I mean, it's bad when you start going, I don't trust putting anybody on their team on my fantasy team.
Yeah.
Like, they're not good. They're just not. And it's like they brought all their problems from last year into this season. And it's unfortunate because, like, I don't want them to be bad. I'm like, they have good plans, it seems, but they just get punched in the face by injury bugs and, like, not being able to do anything. Like, today was rough. Yeah. That's about it, man.
Man. I think it's it's funny because I was like, I was filling out the record predictions for the year, and I was like, oh, Eagles are gonna start 2-0 and for sure, without a doubt. And well, here we are. Yeah, I was wrong on that one, but yeah, I don't know. I think I think it's just, like you guys said, defense and receiver problems mainly. I was thinking they would, just based off of how well they did at the end of last year, and I was thinking, okay, well, they're going to get everyone back, and they'll be healthy, and it'll be great. They'll be fired up, ready to get back at it, and they'll probably go, what did I say, 11-5, I think?
Yeah.
And, it's still early. That still could be the case. I don't know, but I don't know. It's not looking great for them so far.
I think another piece of this, as I'm kind of going through it in my mind, because it's just really weird. Like, watching that game today, I was like, I still, like, there's just something that doesn't feel right about this. Because as you said, they look like a playoff team to begin the year or before the season started. Carson Wentz last year, in the playoffs, and yes, he did get hurt for that game against Seattle, but you look at Carson Wentz from weeks 14 to that playoff game, and you're like, okay, he's kind of leading the charge here. But they can't make him do that for 16 weeks. They can't make him do that for the first 5-6 weeks of the season. And even for a guy like Miles Sanders, he wasn't as productive today. Why? Because there's no other receivers or other pieces to help him, gain some yards or to put some pressure off of Sanders, to put pressure off Wentz to make plays. And I think that's also another piece of the issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And then I wonder, like, well, what happens if they do lose Wentz to an injury, which
Jalen Hurts, who we saw a little bit today in some gadget plays.
Yeah. But then I wonder, like, how will he do as a starter?
Yeah. We don't really know at this point.
It's funny because Philly is like one of the last places I would have expected Jalen Hurts to go.
Yeah.
Coming out of college. I was like, nah, he's probably just going to be like some backup who never sees the field for some random team like Jacksonville or something.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
Yeah. I want to go to a couple of games here. The Niners and the Jets, the Giants and the Bears, even the Broncos and the Steelers. We saw a significant amount of injuries. Saquon looks to be out with the torn ACL. For the Niners side, Jimmy Garoppolo looks to be out about 2 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas look like they'll be out with an ACL. Just so many injuries around the league, and that's kind of the big storyline other than the big games today. So, Brandon, I'll start with you on this because we were talking about it a little bit earlier today about how no preseason, as you've continued to mention, might affect those injuries. So you can say your piece on that.
Well, friends, you know what? No, I'm not gonna say I told you so. Oh wait, I just did. I told you so. Have I not, throughout our conversations on air about the rush through to the season without preseason, said multiple times that this is going to result in players getting hurt? Shane, have I not said that?
Yeah, you have.
You have.
And Robert has so solidly, in his steadfast way, said, "Oh, that's ridiculous. It's not gonna. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They don't need to warm up. They don't need to experience getting hit. The body is not used to. Is not something that can just like go from 0 to 100 and like not get as much experience with warming up to the hits and know how it what and be able to the type of stuff. This is what I was expecting. I was shocked that week 1 we hardly had any injuries. This is bad, man. Like, look at some of these injuries. Like 3 ACLs, multiple knees, multiple legs, like hamstrings.
A lot of it's below the waist stuff.
So, and apparently, San Francisco is terrified to play at MetLife again.
They're playing at MetLife next week, and they're worried about the turf.
Well, they played there today as well.
Right.
And they're literally like, we're terrified. And I'm like, that's a little dramatic, but it's crazy. Today was nuts. Like, it changed the way that the season's going to go, I think, for a lot of these teams. Because if you think about it, 2 to 6 weeks, that's a long time for a team like San Francisco.
Yeah, and we saw when Garoppolo got hurt a couple of years ago with Mullins and Beathard having to play a good amount, how difficult that was.
I
think San Francisco's out of the running, honestly, because they don't have a defense. They don't have.
They still have a top
Garoppolo.
5 defense, but it's not as amazing. I still think they
lost
do.
2 of their biggest pieces.
Actually, to be fair, they lost Nick Bosa, but Solomon Thomas isn't as much of a piece.
And they don't have Sherman.
They don't have Sherman.
Yeah.
I mean, they are getting back Kittle probably for Giants, but but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Shane, I'll go with you with the injuries as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. For some reason, I just had a feeling that last year had to be San Francisco's year to win it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I did. I don't know why. But anyways. Yeah, I mean, it's, there were a lot of significant injuries, obviously, but it seems like about half of them came from just that one game. They lost 6 Niners players and then another 4 guys in the Jets. Is that right?
Maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not exactly sure.
I don't know. Which is crazy. I mean, if it really is a field issue, got to take care of that, obviously. Or if that's just them trying to make an excuse. I don't know. Who knows? I'm not going to point any fingers for right now. But it's, yeah, I mean, that's why that is the one thing that's, good about the preseason is that it's because I think a big reason why there weren't too many injuries in week 1 is because they were kind of, at least from a lot of the games that I was watching, they were just kind of going, not half speed, but like, it looked like the Pro Bowl almost, where they were just not, where they weren't fully, you know what I mean? So, and I think that was kind of because they were like, well, let's just, we haven't had any preseason, anything like that. So let's just ease into it. And then now this week, people were starting to get more gung-ho. And then that's when you saw all this stuff happen. And it was just instead of 4 games or even 2 games or 3 games just to ease into it, they just did like one kind of, and then here we are. So
it is interesting for a couple of things. So, or a couple of things I want to bring up. One is I thought the first month would feel like preseason. It really hasn't. They have really gone full speed. And 2, is it fair for the NFL, once we kind of get back to everything being regular, is it fair for the NFL to, let's say, not keep the 4 preseason games, move it to 2 instead? Is that still enough time, or do you still think the 4 preseason games make sense?
it'll probably be 3, right?
Yeah.
I think they want to move it to 3, but I'm even proposing even farther and going to 2. Do you think that's fair or no?
No, I think the coaches will say we need 3. And I think it's going to be a mixture of things. I think it's going to be, they'll say 3 because they need to be able to see who to take. And I think they'll point to like this year, because I think we're not done with injuries this year. I think it's going to be just really bad. And I think they're going to kind of go, this is why.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and that kind of covers a few games as well. Drew Lock as well got hurt in that Denver game. I want to go now to the Chiefs and the Chargers. Shane, I'll start with you and Justin Herbert's debut. Of course, he had to step in for Tyron Taylor, who had some pretty bad chest pain before kickoff, actually. And then we got to see Justin Herbert kind of get thrust in and play really well. In your experience as, a coach in high school and stuff, I wonder if you can give us some perspective on this. Why is it that so many of these young quarterbacks that come into the league the past few years are able to be so successful right away and look like franchise quarterbacks even in their first game? What is it about how the coaches are preparing, or how the league has changed in the last 5 years, let's say, to get these young quarterbacks ready pretty much almost right away?
Well, I think it's a couple things. For starters, I think more and more colleges are starting to play more pro-style offenses, and vice versa. I think a lot of, pro offenses are starting to look a bit more, I guess, college, because the league is becoming much more mobile at the quarterback position, and so that's what these college styles are kind of catered towards. And so I think that's one thing for starters. Also, I mean, just look at Herbert with his size, his athletic ability. I mean, he's 6'6". He's pretty fast. He has, great throwing mechanics. And, I think just having dedication and putting the work in and adapting to your new team. And I mean, just look at Burrow. I mean, it's for him. I think like half of it is just the mental game for him, confidence. He's like, yeah, I'm ready to win. And I think Herbert is probably kind of the same, because he's just entering the league like with this mentality, like, yeah, I want to be a star in this league. How can I do that? And I think they, when you put your mind to something like that and you work towards it, it's going to be easier for you, obviously. And yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's just, I think it's, like I said, the the professional style offenses are becoming more catered to, like, the college type of quarterback in a way. Not that they totally are. I mean, I don't see guys like Jalen Hurts being totally successful in the NFL, despite the fact that he was a great college quarterback. But that's definitely been changing in the last 5 years, and especially in like the last year or two, I would say.
And then, so Brandon, with you, what are your thoughts on Herbert's debut and what Shane kind of mentioned on how the quarterback position is changing as a whole?
Yeah, I agree. I think Herbert, he obviously. I think one of the things about, if you think about it, a lot of the times with these rookies, a lot of them aren't preparing as if they're going to start. Um, Justin Herbert 100% was prepared to start at any time. He was prepared to go in the middle of the game, to go in at the end of a game, prepared to go in with the starting quarterback not playing because of chest issues. He was prepared, and I think a lot of that has to be given props to the coaching staff, because I really do think a lot of the time it comes down to how well can coaching staffs prepare young players for the big time, for the limelight, for the big situations. And I mean, he was just, I don't know yet whether this is like just a fluke or whether he'll like actually be big time, but it kind of points to the direction that like he probably is for the real deal.
Then to finish off on the Chargers, I want you both to react to this report that just came out about an hour ago that Tyrod Taylor is the starter moving forward if he's 100% healthy. Do you agree with that decision? Do you think it makes sense to let Herbert sit?
No.
That's the stupidest decision. Honestly, if I was a Chargers fan, I'd be so mad. I'd be like, how do you put back in the old guy when you just had this young up and coming player just go in there and rip it up? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, let him keep his momentum up, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel the same way with that.
Yeah.
And then, Shane, I'll have you finish off with the Chiefs. What do you think went wrong for them early on in that game? And then how do you think, of course, with Mahomes and his talent to kind of get them back in the game and Buckirk's amazing kick to finish off?
Well, yeah, I mean, Mahomes is just ridiculous, especially when he's playing from behind like that. I think in the beginning it just looked like they were. How do I say this? They weren't playing with a lot of fire. They were just kind of out there, going through the motions and like, it's early in the game. We got it, whatever. And then they were just kind of not making a whole lot of progress. And then eventually they're down 17-3 or something at one point. So then or 17-6. So then I think at that point, it's like third quarter. And they're like, okay, maybe we should actually kick into gear here. And then they did. And not that that's exactly how it happened, but that's how it looked for me, at least. And I just think part of it too also had to do with the fact that they were not preparing their game plan for Herbert. They were preparing for Tyrod Taylor. So that is one thing I think that worked to his advantage, because they were having to like adjust on the fly. You know what I mean? Not until halftime and they could, go in the locker room and say, okay, let's settle down and focus, think about what we can do now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you definitely noticed that in the second half. But, he still did. I mean, Herbert still did pretty well. But, I think it's just, a lot of unexpected stuff that, happened right there on the fly that certainly didn't help them out.
Mm-hmm. And then let's go with the Vikings and the Colts. Kirk Cousins looks like a backup quarterback. that was terrible. 3 interceptions. He looks just, I don't even know how to explain it, especially when they paid him another 2 years on top of his contract that he already has. It does not look good for a team that I think a lot of people peg to be, champions of the NFC North, including myself. Brannan, what are your thoughts on Kirk Cousins' struggles and this offense?
They're not. I think they're not really getting anything going. And when you're a team that's not getting anything going, it becomes really hard in anything you do, whether it be or really any level of athletics, whether it's like pro football, college, amateur, frisbee, or whatever. Like, if you're losing all the time and you're not really getting, even in like, not even if you're losing all the time, but if you're like not getting anything going while you're losing, it just becomes harder and harder to put any. Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't feel like Kirk Cousins is a motivated guy, and honestly, I know for a fact I would not be able to get motivated behind Kirk Cousins. Like, he's not a good leader. He's a definitely like a backup at best quarterback. And I mean, I don't think it's just Kirk Cousins, but like Miami is a team that like went from being pretty well put together to like being a mess.
Minnesota. Yeah.
Yeah, Minnesota. My bad. Both them teams.
I think M teams. No, I think that the biggest thing for me, at least in this offense, was losing Stephon Diggs, because that was, for me, that's like the one. I mean, yeah, Thielen's good, but I mean, Diggs was like their one saving grace, in my opinion, and now, now that's out the window. So, yeah, I mean, they just, there's only so much Dalvin Cook can do, and until he probably gets hurt, because he's quite injury prone.
And he's running the ball a lot.
Yeah, and no preseason. So yeah, I mean, and then their defense too. They lost a lot of significant guys. Griffin. What was that other guy? Why am I blanking on his name?
They lost a few guys either way.
Well, yeah, but anyways, veteran presence on the defense, and I mean that didn't help either. So, yeah, I mean this team just they just look sloppy and, like Brandon said, very unmotivated, and I don't think that'll change, to be honest.
To finish off today, I want to highlight a few offenses. And I'll start first with the Green Bay Packers. Offensively, they look ridiculous. Aaron Jones looks great. Aaron Rodgers looks so motivated. And it's not even that the fact that, Devontae Adams had a hamstring. Valdez-Scantling kind of stepped up today. I really like this Packers offense. They look so much better than they have in the past, even considering the receiving depth. I'm really excited to see what they do against the Saints next week on Sunday night. This Packers offense looks absolutely amazing. And then to go through a couple more of these offenses to finish out the day. Shane, I'll have you talk about the Cardinals and the Ravens offense. So those two teams, what are your thoughts on both of their offenses this week?
And Kyler Murray looks really good. He's a lot of fun to watch. I can say that much. I said in the offseason that he's kind of like he's like a poor man's Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson. But at this point, I don't even feel good about saying that because, I mean, he looks really competitive too. I don't think he's quite at their level, but he's he's really holding his own. And I mean, I think just D Hop coming in and he's giving them that extra threat. I think that's what's really elevating them, and everything's just kind of falling into place. They're a little weak on tight end, but I think that for what this team's strengths are, at least offensively, that's not a huge deal for them. And defensively, they are also, significantly better than they were last year with, the secondary looks pretty sharp. But anyways, the other offense, the Ravens, you said?
Yes, the Ravens offense here.
The Ravens, they were interesting today because there wasn't like a single standout player from that offense today. Yet as a unit, they got it done. They scored 20 or 30 points? How many scored?
Yeah,
How many points
they finished with 33.
33, jeez. But that just shows how good that offense is, how many guys there are, how deep it is, and just the fact that they're always, it seems like they can always, kind of put something together. Except for Tennessee. I'm
pretty happy with Tennessee today. I got to be honest. With Tannehill, looked good.
No, I'm saying except for the game against Tennessee.
Oh, that's right. Right, of course.
Yeah, but yeah, and I have Mark Andrews on my fantasy team, and he only got 4 points. He had 1 reception. Like, come on, what are you doing, dude?
Are we using this for complaint hour? What's
no? It's good.
And then let's move over to the Titans. Of course, they did play really well today. I'm really happy with how Tannehill played. But let's go to one team on a losing effort and one team on a winning effort for you, Brandon. The Jaguars offense, and then the Bucs offense as well, which you mentioned earlier in the day that you really enjoyed watching Brady and this offense play against a pretty bare bones Bucs team. But what are your thoughts on the Jags and the Bucs offense from today?
I think they're both teams that are getting it going. They have good offenses, but there's something. I mean, like the Bucs. For me, between the Bucs and the Jags, I would say the Bucs are like very fun to watch. Jaguars just didn't have it going, in terms of what they had against like the Colts last week, for example. But I think that's just the reality of what the Jaguars are going to be. The Jaguars are going to be as good as Gardner Minshew are, and I think they fought well against Tennessee. And I don't even know if Tennessee really deserved it more. It was just they got the win.
What makes the Bucs fun for you today? Obviously, against that Panthers team, what kind of stood out to you? And be like, oh, this offense is actually pretty fun compared to what we spoke about last week.
Well, they got the ball moving. Brady was a bit more accurate. They got, they were kind of mixing and matching. Yeah, I was a little frustrated as having Ronald Jones on my team that they were switch swapping running back so much, but it made for an interesting watch, and it was an interesting team to watch. So,
yeah. Last couple of matchups that we didn't overtly mention that I'll finish out on. The Bears. Do you guys all agree that the Bears still look terrible, even though they're 2-0?
yes.
Yeah, they're not great.
Like, I don't even think Trubisky's that great. And then with the Bills and Dolphins, that matchup was pretty weird because we know the Bills' defense is probably better than that.
Yeah.
And Josh Allen, as you know, Shane, having him on your fantasy team, he's just been ridiculous.
Yeah.
That game was That game was so bad that even CBS didn't want people to see it.
Oh my God, yeah, the tape delay. How come? Here's the funny thing too about that. How come every year, especially the first month of the year, without fail, we have a lightning delay and we have a broadcast outage? It literally happens every first month of the year. It's really weird.
It's a curse.
It is
Ghost.
And it
really.
happens a lot in Miami.
Ooh.
It happens a lot in Miami.
Like,
Yeah,
they have so many problems with the broadcast trucks in Miami.
yeah, it's really weird. And then to finish off, as we always do, our Fantasy Star MVP nominees. Shane, you mentioned yours, Dak Prescott. You're pretty happy with him today, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first half wasn't great for him, but then coming back from behind, and he got 39 fantasy points at the end of the day, which is crazy. So, yeah, he'd be mine.
Brandon, who is your MVP?
I will be
Fantasy
right
this
back.
week.
I will be going right back to the same guy I said last week. Once again, Russell Wilson, 299 yards through the air, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, which I do not count because it was not his fault.
Yeah, true.
Pretty damn good day. Russell Wilson, my fantasy MVP.
Let's see. Who did I have? I have Jonnu Smith of the Tennessee Titans. He finished with, I believe, about 24 points. This is a guy to watch for if you're looking for a tight end moving forward. The guy always has one really interesting breakout game in fantasy. He had one last year, and then he just kind of coasted. The fact that it happened this early is huge. So Jonnu Smith is mine for the week. Great show as always, guys. Good post show. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to do the post show for next week, as we have a big Monday night game between the Ravens and the Chiefs. So we'll figure all that out next week. But have a great rest of your week, everybody, and we will see you next time. Also, predictions for Raiders and Saints in Vegas.
I will say 41-10 Saints.
I'm going to go 27-3 Saints.
I'm going to go 24-14 Saints. No Michael Thomas. You expect Emmanuel Sanders to do more. I'll go with the Saints there as well. And that is it.
I'm gonna say 31-10.
All right. Sounds great.
Put a stamp on it. Dang it.
All right. And we will see you all on Friday, as we always do. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this Sunday as much as we all